Hello friends, this is Dr. Manasa. I did my MD Anesthesia and Critical Care from PGI MER Chandigarh. We will be discussing about few anesthesia NEET PG MCQs. Okay. The first question. The person who demonstrated the effect of anesthesia successfully for the first time. Options are Horace Wells, W.T.G. Morton, August Bayer, Carl Kohler. And you can see here they have also given you the first successful demonstration of anesthesia with ether. This is an memory based question, a question from the history of anesthesia. First we will discuss few points regarding history of anesthesia. The term anesthesia was coined by Oliver Wendell Holmes and the term balanced anesthesia was coined by John Lundy and Ralph M. Waters. And coming to the first gas used in anesthesia, that is nitrous oxide, it was discovered by Joseph Priestley, who also discovered oxygen. And the analgesic property and the first demonstration of nitrous oxide was done by Horace Wells, who was a dentist, but that demonstration was a failure as nitrous oxide is not a complete anesthetic agent. Okay. And next came Dr. W.T.G. Morton, who discovered the gas ether. He demonstrated the use of ether for the first time on 16th October 1846 at Massachusetts General Hospital, Boston, for the excision of neck mass. This demonstration was successful and W.T.G. Morton is considered as father of modern anesthesia, and father of anesthesia is considered as John Snow. He is the first practicing anesthesiologist. Okay. This 16th October is celebrated as World Anesthesia Day. These are the few points which you have to remember regarding the development of anesthesia in the history of anesthesia. Okay. Now, here they are asking person who demonstrated the effect of anesthesia successfully for the first time. It is W.T.G. Morton. Horace Wells, though he demonstrated the use of nitrous oxide, but it was a failure. Okay. Horace Wells, he demonstrated use of nitrous oxide for the first time. And August Bayer, he is the person, he is the doctor who first gave first spinal anesthesia was given by August Bayer in the year 1918. Okay. August Bayer was considered as father of regional anesthesia. Okay. He is father of regional anesthesia and first gave spinal anesthesia. Carl Kohler, he is famous for the discovery of cocaine. Okay. And W.T.G. Morton is considered as father of modern anesthesia, who first discovered ether. Ether was first discovered by W.T.G. Morton and first public demonstration was done by W.T.G. Morton on 16th October 1846 at Massachusetts General Hospital, Boston. And this 16th October is celebrated as World Anesthesia Day. And W.T.G. Morton is considered as father of modern anesthesia. Father of modern anesthesia is W.T.G. Morton. And father of anesthesia is John Snow. Father of regional anesthesia is August Bayer, who first gave spinal anesthesia. Okay. These are the few points which you have to remember regarding history of anesthesia. Next question. Brain dead patient is classified under which ASA physical status classification? Options 2, 3, 5 and 7. This ASA physical status classification is very important for your examinations. It was many a times asked in your previous entrance examinations, especially in AIIMS. In every alternate paper you will find the question on ASA physical status classification. Okay. First we will be recollecting the points regarding ASA physical status classification, the classification and examples under each class, and what is the use of ASA physical status classification and what are the drawbacks. Okay. ASA physical status was given by American Society of Anesthesiologists physical status classification. It is used to assess the risk associated with the patient medical conditions, risk of the patient, stratify the risk of the patient. Okay. There are 6 classes, class 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. Okay. For elective surgery we will be writing it as ASA physical status class 1 or 2 depending on the patient condition, and for emergency surgeries we will be adding E to the ASA physical status classification, depicting it as emergency surgery. Okay. And the classes are medical condition or physical status. Physical status of patient. Class 1 is a normal healthy patient. Normal healthy patient who is not a smoker, not an alcoholic. Class 2 is a patient with mild systemic disease. Patient with mild systemic disease. Class 3 is a patient with severe systemic disease. Class 4 is a patient with severe systemic disease where there is constant threat to life because of his medical condition. Severe systemic disease that there is constant threat to life. Class 5 is a moribund patient. Moribund patient who is not expected to survive without surgery. Surgery is the only option for his survival. Okay. Moribund patient who is not expected to survive without surgery. Class 6 is a declared brain dead patient posted for organ procurement. Okay. These are the 6 physical ASA physical status classification, and you have to remember these classes and the examples which come under these classes, and how you are going to stratify or classify the patient under ASA physical status classification. The examples are like non-smoker comes under class 1. He is non-smoker, non-alcoholic, all patient with normal healthy patient comes under class 1. In class 2, the present smoker comes under class 2. Social alcoholic patient comes under class 2, and those with alcohol dependent patient comes under class 3. And the pregnant patient, though she is healthy without any comorbid conditions, because of her pregnancy itself she is classified under class 2. Because of her physiological changes due to pregnancy, there will be a mild systemic disease which is compromising her functional activity, hence she is considered as class 2. And obese patient with BMI 30 to 40 without any comorbids, but he is obese, his BMI is 30 to 40, then he is considered as class 2. And patient with BMI more than 40, that is morbid obese patient, is considered as class 3. Okay. And a patient with chronic kidney disease on regular dialysis. Chronic kidney disease is a severe systemic disease, but as he is on regular dialysis, his parameters are within control, his electrolyte and everything are in control because of his regular dialysis, hence he is considered as class 3. And the same patient who is having history of chronic kidney disease but not on regular dialysis, then which is having a constant threat to life because of chronic kidney disease and irregular dialysis, he is having constant threat to life, hence he is considered as class 4. And a patient with history of coronary artery disease, a cerebrovascular accident, a transient ischemic attack with less than 3 months of history. If the patient is posted for surgery within the 3 months of history of coronary artery disease, then he is classified as class 4, as this he will be having increased chances of perioperative risk and increased chances of recurrence of coronary artery disease, that is constant threat to life, hence he is classified as class 4. If the same history, that is coronary artery disease with or transient ischemic attack for more than 3 months, he is considered as class 3. And multi-organ dysfunction, a patient with septic shock with multi-organ dysfunction posted for any abdominal surgery or for any surgery, he is considered as class 5, as he is moribund patient, all his organs are under dysfunction and the surgery is the only option for his survival. Such patient is considered as class 5. And the other examples under class 5 are abdominal aortic aneurysm, rupture of abdominal aortic aneurysm and any thoracic aortic aneurysms posted for surgery. These examples comes under class 5. And a declared brain dead patient who is posted for organ transplantation or organ procurement is considered as class 6. The drawbacks of ASA physical status classification are, it does not consider the age of the patient, that is the same surgery can be done to a young patient. For example, 20-year male patient posted for laparoscopic cholecystectomy, the risk will be less, but the same surgery was done to a 80-year-old male patient, the risk varies. As the age increases, the risk of surgery also increases. And here ASA physical status classification, it does not consider the age of the patient. Though it is the same surgery, the risk varies with the age of the patient. And also it does not consider the type of surgery or the risk associated with the surgery and the duration of surgery. if a patient is posted for cataract surgery and he is and the same patient he is posted for brain neurosurgical procedures like excision of mask or excision of space occupying lesion in the brain, then the risk of the surgery is different for cataract surgery and for brain surgery. This is not considered by ASA physical status classification, and the type of anesthesia is also not considered by ASA physical status classification. And regarding this ASA physical status classification, there is a subjective bias that is observer bias is present in ASA physical status classification. These are the drawbacks. Okay. The most important questions asked are based on the examples, like they'll give you a case scenario and ask the physical status classification of that patient. Okay. You have to be clear regarding these examples. Okay. Write down: non-smoker, smoker, pregnant female, social alcoholic, alcoholic dependent, acute kidney injury, CKD with regular dialysis, CKD with irregular dialysis, CAD or transient ischemic attack or CVA, more than 3 months, less than 3 months, sepsis, multi-organ dysfunction, BMI 30 to 40, obese patient, BMI more than 40, pacemaker patient with in situ pacemaker, rupture abdominal aortic aneurysm, head injury with mass effect. These are more frequently asked scenarios and the examples of ASA physical status classification. Non-smoker comes under class 1, smoker class 2, pregnant class 2, social alcoholic class 2, alcoholic dependent class 3, acute kidney injury class 4, CKD on regular dialysis class 3, on irregular dialysis class 4, CAD more than 3 months is class 3, less than 3 months is class 4, sepsis is class 4, MODS is class 5. Okay. BMI 30 to 40 class 2, more than 40 class 3, pacemaker also comes under class 3, abdominal aortic aneurysm class 5, intracranial head injury with mass effect also comes under class 5. Okay. If it is an emergency surgery, then you have to add E to the class. Okay. Next question is modified Mallampati grade of the patient shown below. This is image based question, and this modified Mallampati grading is also very important for your examination. The options given are 1, 2, 3, 4. Nowadays there are many image based questions asked from anesthesia, not only anesthesia but also for all other subjects. The pattern of questions are changing from the direct single line answers to the scenario based, clinical based questions. Okay. Many image based questions and recent updates. This modified Mallampati grading image based question is very important for you. will be recalling the points regarding modified Mallampati grading. This modified Mallampati grading was given by Seshagiri Rao. Okay. Mallampati Seshagiri Rao. He is an Indian. He used this Mallampati grading to assess the size of the tongue for laryngoscopy. It is done during the pre-anesthetic checkup, airway assessment during pre-anesthetic checkup. It is a predictor of difficult airway. There are 4 classes of modified Mallampati grading: class 1, class 2, class 3 and class 4. In class 1, you will see all the structures. This is assessed by asking the patient to sit in front of you at the same eye level and ask him to open his mouth, wide open his mouth, protrude the tongue and look at the structures visible when he open his mouth, like this. You ask the patient to sit at the same level, ask him to wide open his mouth without any vocalization. Okay. And then see the structures and assess the size of the tongue for laryngoscopy. It tells about difficult intubation. Okay. In class 1, we will be seeing all soft palate, hard palate, uvula, entire uvula, fauces, pillars. Okay. In class 2, pillars are not seen. Pillars are not seen. You will be seeing fauces, part of the uvula without tip, soft palate, hard palate. Okay. In class 3, only base of uvula is seen. In class 4, nothing is visible. Uvula is not visible. Many questions are asked based on the uvula, the uvula which is visible. In class 1, entire uvula is visible. In class 2, uvula without tip. In class 3, base of the uvula is visible. In class 4, no uvula is visible. Okay. Here class 1 or class 2 are for easy intubation. Class 3 and class 4 are for difficult intubation. Difficult intubation. Okay. Here you will be seeing entire uvula. Entire uvula is visible. Here only uvula without tip. In class 2, in class 3, base of uvula. Here uvula is not visualized. In class 4, uvula is not visualized. Okay. Class 1 and 2 are with easy intubation. Class 3 and class 4 are difficult intubation. Okay. Here the answer is, in this picture you can clearly see only the base of uvula is visible. Only base of uvula is visible. Hence, this comes under class 3. Answer is 3. In class 1, entire uvula is seen. Class 1, you will be seeing entire uvula. In class 2, only uvula without tip. In class 3, base of uvula. In class 4, uvula is not visual. Uvula is not visualized. Okay. 1 and 2 for easy intubation. 3 and 4 are difficult intubation, predictors of difficult intubation. Okay. Next question. What is the color of medical oxygen cylinder? Options are black body with grey shoulders, grey body with black and white shoulders, black body with white shoulders, grey body with black shoulders. This oxygen color coding is a safety mechanism for regarding anesthesia machines. Okay. This is very important for your exam point of view also. The color coding of oxygen cylinders, pin index, pin index, pressure of the cylinders, these are very important for your exams. Okay. First we will discuss the cylinders, their importance and all, then we will come to the answer. First, air, the physical form of air, air is stored in gaseous form, oxygen is also in gaseous form, nitrous oxide in liquid form, carbon dioxide also in liquid form, cyclopropane in liquid form, NOx in gaseous form. The gases which are stored in liquid form are nitrous oxide, carbon dioxide and cyclopropane. This is one of the question asked in your previous examinations. The reason is the critical temperature of nitrous oxide is 36.5, at which it turns into liquid. Hence, nitrous oxide is best stored in liquid form. Okay. Coming to the pin index is the safety mechanism, pin index safety system which avoids fitting of wrong cylinder to the anesthesia machine. Pins are present on the machine and holes are present on the cylinder. The pin index of every gas is specific for the cylinder. Okay. Air, it has pin index of 1,5, oxygen 2,5, nitrous oxide 3,5, carbon dioxide it has 2 pin index, that is 1,6 and 2,6. 1,6 when concentration is more than 7%, 2,6 when it is less than 7%. Cyclopropane 3,6, NOx is 7, it has only 1 pin index, that is 7. Okay. And the pressure of cylinders, the pressure in air, oxygen is approximately 2000 psi. Okay. 2000 psi, air and oxygen is 2000 psi. Nitrous oxide is 760 psi. Carbon dioxide is also 760 psi. Cyclopropane has different, that is 75 psi. NOx is a mixture of oxygen and nitrous oxide, 50% oxygen and 50% nitrous oxide. As the pressure of oxygen is high, the cylinder pressure is also of higher pressure. When there is a mixture of two gases, the gas which is having higher pressure will take the upper hand, and the pressure of NOx is 2000 psi. Okay. Now, color coding of cylinders, it is very important. Air, the color coding of air cylinder is grey body with white shoulders, grey body with white shoulders. Oxygen is black body with white shoulders, black body with white shoulders. Nitrous oxide, it is blue, entire cylinder is blue, nitrous oxide blue. Carbon dioxide is grey, cyclopropane orange. NOx, as it is a mixture of two gases, it should has the property or color coding of the two gases, that is as nitrous oxide is blue, NOx cylinder body is blue body with oxygen shoulders, that is white shoulders. Okay. For pictographic memory, here you can see black body with white shoulders, this is black body with white shoulders, that is oxygen cylinder. This is completely blue is nitrous oxide, and grey body with white shoulders, this is air. Blue body with white shoulders and a connecting pipe for inhalation, that is NOx. These are most commonly asked questions in your examinations, and the color coding system is also present for the pipeline system of the gases, medical gases. The pipeline systems, the color coding of cylinders and pipeline systems are frequently asked. The pipeline system also has a similar color coding, that is nitrous oxide blue pipeline. For oxygen it is white with black stripes, and for suction it is yellow, vacuum or suction is yellow. These are the three important pipelines which you can see in the anesthesia room, OT room. and the color coding for this is also important. Similar to the pin index safety system, for the pipelines there is diameter index safety system. Okay. Now coming to the answer here, they are asking oxygen cylinder, that is black body with white shoulders. There is no cylinder like black body with grey shoulders, grey body with black and white shoulders, grey body with black shoulders. Okay. You just remember black body with white shoulders is oxygen cylinders. Nitrous oxide, it is completely blue. Air, grey body with white shoulders. Ntanox, blue body with white shoulders, and carbon dioxide completely grey. Okay. Next question. Best circuit for controlled ventilation in children. Here best circuit for controlled ventilation in children. You have to read the question completely. Do not jump into the answer without reading the question completely or without reading the options completely. You have to read the question and options completely. Here they are asking controlled ventilation in children. Okay. Now we will be revising about Mapleson circuits. These are Mapleson circuits are Mapleson A, B, C, D, E and F. Mapleson A is also called as Magill circuit. It is the best circuit for spontaneous ventilation in adults. Okay. B and C are absolute nowadays. They are not in use. D, Mapleson D, the modification of Mapleson D or coaxial circuit of Mapleson D is Baines circuit, which is more commonly used nowadays, and it is considered as universal circuit, and it is the circuit of choice for controlled ventilation in adults. This can also be used for spontaneous ventilation, but it is the circuit of choice for controlled ventilation in adults. And Mapleson E, also known as Ayer's T-piece. Mapleson F is also known as JR circuit or Jackson-Rees circuit. Mapleson F is modification of Mapleson E. Okay. Mapleson F is Jackson-Rees circuit, which is the circuit of choice for both spontaneous ventilation and controlled ventilation in children. Okay. Now write down the points. A, B, C and D are used in adults, as B and C are obsolete nowadays, they are not used. A is used in adults, D is also used in adults, E and C are used in children. Okay. A, also known as Magill circuit, B, Baines circuit, E is Ayer's T-piece, F is Jackson-Rees circuit, Jackson-Rees circuit or JR circuit, JR circuit. A is the circuit of choice for spontaneous ventilation in adults, spontaneous ventilation in adults. B and C, they are absolute. Baines is the circuit of choice for controlled ventilation, controlled ventilation in adults. It can also be used for spontaneous ventilation. In children, F is the circuit of choice for both, for children, for both spontaneous and controlled ventilation. Okay. For children, if they ask the circuit of choice for spontaneous ventilation in children or the circuit of choice for controlled ventilation in children is JR circuit, that is Mapleson F. Okay. Now coming to the answer, they have asked the best circuit for controlled ventilation in children, that is Jackson-Rees circuit or JR circuit, Mapleson F. Mapleson F. Magill's is Mapleson A. Baines is modified Mapleson or coaxial Mapleson D. Waters is Mapleson C, but it is obsolete nowadays. It is A is spontaneous ventilation in adults, spontaneous ventilation in adults. D is circuit of choice for controlled ventilation in adults. Okay. Jackson-Reed circuit for both spontaneous and controlled ventilation in children. Okay. Next question. Which of the following statements regarding carbon dioxide absorber is most accurate? Options are: barrel lime is more efficient than soda lime in its ability to absorb carbon dioxide. Barrel lime, here the question is about carbon dioxide absorbance and its properties. The different carbon dioxide absorbance are soda lime, barrel lime and Amazorb. Okay. Now they are comparing all that given in statements. Barrel lime is more efficient than soda lime in its ability to absorb carbon dioxide. No, barrel lime absorbs only 9 to 18 liters of carbon dioxide per 100 gram of barrel lime. Soda lime, it absorbs 14 to 23 liters of carbon dioxide per 100 grams of soda lime. Hence, which is more efficient? Soda lime is more efficient than barrel lime. Reaction of soda lime with carbon dioxide is endothermic. No, you can feel the carbon dioxide absorbent canister, it will be heat when used. Okay. The reaction is exothermic, not endothermic. Barium hydroxide is the main constituent of barrel lime. No, the barrel lime, the constituents of barrel lime are 80% calcium hydroxide and 20% barrel lime. The main constituent is calcium hydroxide, not barium hydroxide, though the name given is barrel lime. Next option, soda lime is packed with silica to form 4 to 8 mesh. Yes. Soda lime, barrel lime and Amazorb are all have the equal size, that is 4 to 8 mesh, and silica is added for hardness. This hardness is maintained to avoid dusting of this carbon dioxide absorbent. If there is dusting and formation of small particles, there will be inhalation of these small particles leading to pneumonia. Okay. Hence, to make it hard and to prevent dusting, silica is added to for hardness and at the size of 4 to 8 mesh. Okay. Here the answer is D. We will be discussing about, we will comparing about the carbon dioxide absorbents, soda lime, barrel lime and Amazorb. Granule size is same, that is 4 to 8 mesh in all. Composition of soda lime is 95% calcium hydroxide, 5% sodium hydroxide and 1% potassium hydroxide. Calcium hydroxide is the main constituent. Sodium hydroxide is used to regenerate the calcium hydroxide. Potassium hydroxide acts as catalyst. In barrel lime, 80% calcium hydroxide, 20% barium hydroxide. In Amazorb, it is calcium chloride and calcium hydroxide. Okay. Indicator which is used in soda lime. This soda lime, when fresh, it is pink in color, and after exhaustion or when after use, it turns into white color. The indicator which turns pink to white is Titan yellow. Okay. The absorption capacity of soda lime is, absorption capacity is 14 to 23 liters of carbon dioxide per 100 grams. Barrel lime absorbs 9 to 18 liters of carbon dioxide per 100 grams. Okay. Moisture is present in soda lime, barrel lime, here it is absent. Hardness is due to silica in soda lime, water of crystallization in barrel lime, and hardness in Amazorb is due to sulfates. Okay. Now you can answer the questions from this table. The size of the particles used for carbon dioxide absorbent are 4 to 8 mesh, and the composition of soda lime, bile lime and Amazop, indicator used, and absorption capacity of soda lime, bile lime, and hardness is due to presence of silica, sulfates and water of crystallization respectively. Okay. Next question. The appropriate size of laryngeal mask airway in 25 kg child is. This is very important for your exams. It was recently asked in your examinations and previously also it was asked many a times. Okay. The size of the laryngeal mask airway is based on the weight of the patient, but the size of the endotracheal tube is based on the age of the patient. Okay. Now, they have given you the weight of the child and asking you the size of the LMA. First, we will discuss the table and then come to the answer. Okay. This table is very important question. Many a times it was asked the size of the LMA based on the weight. The future potential question is the amount of air filled in the mask of the LMA based on the size. This is future potential MCQ. Okay. You have to remember these values such that you may have an extra edge. Okay. For size 1, the weight of the patient is 1 to 5 kg and 1.5 it is 6 to 10 kg, and for 2 10 to 20 kg, 2.5 20 to 30 kg, 3 is 30 to 50 kg, 4 is 50 to 70 kg, 5 is 70 to 100 kgs. For 6 it is more than 100 kgs, you have to use LMA size 6, and the amount of air filled inflated in the mask is 4 ml for size 1, 7 ml for size 1.5, 10 ml for size 2, 14 ml for size 2.5, 20 ml for size 3, 30 ml for size 4, 40 ml for size 5 and 50 ml for size 6. Okay. Remember this 4, 7, 10, 14, 20, 30, 40 and 50. Size 1, 2, 1, 1.5, 2, 2.5, 3, 4, 5, 6. And the weight 1 to 1.5 it is 1, 6 to 10 kgs it is 1.5, 10 to 20 kgs it is 2, 20 to 30 kg is 2.5, 30 to 50 kg is 3, 50 to 70 kg is 4, 70 to 100 kg is 5, more than 100 it is 6. Okay. Now, they have asked you 25 kgs, it comes under 25 kg in the question. 25 kg is between 20 to 30 kgs. The size of the LMA is 2.5. Okay. Size of the LMA is 2.5 for 25 kg. For 1.5 it is 6 to 10 kgs, 2 10 to 20 kg, 2.5 20 to 30 kgs, 3 30 to 50 kgs. Okay. And the ml filled here is 7, 10, 14, 20 ml, 7 ml, 10 ml, 14 ml, 20 ml. This is a potential MCQ. Okay. Next question. An infant with respiratory distress was intubated. The fastest and accurate method to confirm intubation. Options given are capnography, clinically by auscultation, chest radiography and airway pressure management. Here the question is clearly asking the fastest and accurate method. Fastest and accurate method of confirmation of intubation. You have to read all the important points given in your clues given in your question. All in the options also capnography, auscultation, chest radiography, airway pressure management, all these are used to identify or confirm the correct position of ET tube, but they are asking the fastest and accurate method. The accurate method of confirmation of intubation is capnography. Okay, we will discuss about capnography now. All these methods are used to confirm the position of ET tube, but the most accurate is capnography. Capnography, there are different waveforms in capnography. You have to by heart them or learn them. they are many times asked in your exams, like image based questions. They will give you the capnograph and ask you it is seen in which condition. They will give you a scenario and ask you it is the capnograph of is seen in which condition and what is the condition with this kind of capnograph. Okay. The capnographs are: first, normal capnograph, used in you will be seeing this in controlled ventilation and in spontaneous ventilation. And the pathognomic picture, that is shark fin appearance. And the other one is Curare cleft. Flat line. Slow rise in capnography. Sudden rise in capnography. Slow fall in capnography. Sudden fall in capnography. Cardiogenic oscillations. During CPR and ROSC. Carbon dioxide rebreathing. Okay. These are the most commonly asked waveforms, capnographs in your exams. This is normal capnograph seen in controlled ventilation. Controlled ventilation. And this is normal capnograph seen in spontaneous ventilation. Spontaneous ventilation. And this is the pathognomic of shark fin appearance. Shark fin appearance is seen in bronchospasm and obstructive airway diseases like COPD, asthma and any ET tube obstructions. Okay, this is very important. And this cleft is Curare cleft, seen when there is spontaneous ventilation in a ventilated patient or decrease in the effect of muscle relaxation. Effect of muscle relaxation. And flat line ECG, flat line capnograph is seen when there is esophageal intubation, or accidental extubation or disconnection of circuit or any cardiac arrest. Okay. And slow increase in EtCO2 is seen in hypoventilation. there is slow rise in EtCO2. Sudden rapid rise in EtCO2 is seen in malignant hyperthermia. Malignant hyperthermia. Okay. Slow fall in EtCO2. Slow fall in EtCO2 is seen in hyperventilation. And rapid fall in EtCO2 is seen in air embolism, pulmonary embolism. Okay. These are cardiogenic oscillations. Cardiogenic oscillations. These are seen in children and patients with thin chest wall. Okay. Next, this is only up to 10. This is seen during CPR. And up to 10 and sudden rise up to 40, it is return of spontaneous circulation. Return of spontaneous circulation. And the baseline is above, starts from 5 mm of Hg of CO2. This is seen during carbon dioxide rebreathing. When the soda lime exhaust, there is carbon dioxide rebreathing, showing the capnograph starting above the baseline. Okay. These are very important capnographs which are asked many times in your examinations. Okay. The accurate measure of correct placement of ET tube is with capnography. Next question. A patient was in surgery when suddenly a resident noticed the following plot on the capnograph monitor. What should be the immediate next step in the management of the patient? As we have already discussed, there is a dip in the phase 3, that is Curare cleft. Curare cleft is seen when there is decreased effect of muscle relaxant. If this Curare cleft is seen during the surgery, then you have to repeat the dose of muscle relaxant. If it is seen at the end of the surgery, then you have to give the relaxant, that is reversal agent has to be given. This Curare cleft indicates appearance of spontaneous ventilation. Okay. Curare cleft, it indicates start of spontaneous ventilation. Start of spontaneous ventilation. And if it is what you have to do, if it is during surgery, you have to repeat muscle relaxant. If it is at the end of surgery, you have to give reversal agent. Okay. Here they are asking what is should be the immediate next step in the management of patient. Patient was in surgery, surgery is going on and there is a Curare cleft in the capnography. This indicate you have to increase muscle relaxant, increase depth of anesthesia, check tubes for any blockage, change soda lime. This indicates start of spontaneous ventilation and we have to repeat the muscle relaxant. Okay. Next question. Which IV induction agent has the least action on GABA receptor? This is also memory based questions. The mechanism of action of IV induction agents is important. Here they are asking least action on GABA receptor. Options given are thiopentone sodium, ketamine, propofol and midazolam. Almost all the induction agents have their action on GABA receptor except ketamine, which acts on NMDA receptors. Okay. Thiopentone, propofol, midazolam, etomidate all act on GABA receptors. Ketamine which acts on NMDA receptor. Okay. Here the answer is ketamine. Okay. All this thiopentone acts on GABA receptors. Propofol acts on GABA receptors, midazolam acts on GABA receptors and also etomidate. Etomidate also acts on GABA receptors. Okay. Next question. Intravenous anesthetic causing suppression of steroid synthesis. Options given are etomidate, thiopentone, ketamine and propofol. We have discussed during our induction agents, IV induction agents, the importance of etomidate. Etomidate is more cardiostable drug, but the use of etomidate has been withdrawn from the market for few years. The reason behind is it causes suppression of adrenal cortex, decreasing the synthesis of corticosteroids. Even the single dose of etomidate is enough to suppress the adrenal cortex. Hence, it is withdrawn from the market for several years, and after its discovery and because of its importance of cardiostability, it is reintroduced into the market. The side effects of etomidate is very important for your examinations. The side effects of etomidate are, it causes hiccups, and there is a chance of myoclonus which can be prevented with the pre-medication with midazolam, and suppression of steroid synthesis is the main side effect of etomidate. It inhibits the enzyme 11 beta hydroxylase, thus decreasing the synthesis of steroids. Okay. And also it has maximum nausea and vomiting producing property. Maximum nausea and producing property is seen with etomidate. The IV induction agent which has anti-nauseating property, that is anti-emetic property, is propofol, and etomidate, it produces nausea and vomiting. Okay. And the other side effects are pain on injection. The drugs which cause pain on injection are etomidate, propofol, thiopentone. Okay. And it also has superficial thrombophlebitis. Okay. Note down, the side effects of etomidate are very important and frequently asked in your exams. Side effects of etomidate, it is steroidal, suppression of steroidal synthesis, suppression of steroid synthesis by inhibiting 11 beta hydroxylase enzyme, causes nausea and vomiting, myoclonus, hiccups, pain on injection, superficial thrombophlebitis. Okay. This is the most important side effect of etomidate. Okay. Suppression of steroidal synthesis. Here the answer is IV anesthetic causing suppression of steroid synthesis, it is etomidate. Okay. Next question, which of the following age and MAC relationship is true? Infant greater than neonate greater than adult, neonate more than adult more than infant, neonate more than infant more than adult, adult more than infant more than neonate. You may think adult has greater requirement of MAC when compared to neonate and infant, but it is false. Maximum or highest requirement of MAC is seen during your infancy period. Infants has higher requirement of MAC compared to neonates and adults. Infants has higher requirement of MAC, then comes neonates, then comes this adults. Okay. This you have to remember, infants more than neonates more than adults, and those conditions which decrease the MAC, the conditions which decreases the MAC and the conditions which increases the MAC. Many questions are asked from this topic. Like you have to remember, those conditions which lead to CNS depression will have decreased requirement of MAC, and those conditions which increase the CNS activity or those stimulate CNS are requiring higher MAC. Okay. We will write down the points first. Decrease of MAC is seen in situations and increase of MAC is seen in which situations? decrease of MAC, that is CNS depressant conditions like hypothermia, hyperthermia up to 42 degrees Celsius, acute alcohol intoxication, severe anemia, hypoxia, hypercapnia, and electrolyte disturbances like hyponatremia, hypercalcemia, hypermagnesemia, and use of drugs like IV induction agents or local anesthetics. Okay. These are the conditions which causes CNS depression, and the requirement of MAC is less in these conditions. Okay. And those conditions with increased MAC are hyperthermia more than 42 degrees Celsius, chronic alcohol dependent patient, hypernatremia, and the drugs like cocaine and ephedrine which causes CNS stimulation and increased barometric pressure. Where there is CNS stimulation, and these conditions will require increased MAC. Coming to the age, it is highest MAC is required in infancy. Okay. Infants requires more MAC compared to neonates. Neonates require more MAC compared to adult. Here the answer is A. Infants more than neonates more than adults. Okay. MAC, it indicates the potency of the inhalational agent. Okay. Next question, a 25-year-old business representative was admitted for hernia repair. He was administered muscle relaxants, following which there was a fall in BP, intense pruritus, increased airway resistance, which improved after a shot of diphenhydramine. Which of the following drug is the cause of above said complications? Here they have given a case scenario asking you which of the muscle relaxant is responsible for such anaphylactic reaction in the patient. This reaction, that is fall in BP, intense pruritus and increased airway resistance, is due to histamine release. This histamine release is seen with isoquinoline derivatives. What are the isoquinoline derivatives? They are D-tuberculin, metacurium, atracurium, cisatracurium and gantacurium. Histamine release is maximum with D-tuberculin, and it is also seen with atracurium, but not to such an extent caused by D-tuberculin, as D-tuberculin has maximum release of histamine and maximum anaphylactic reactions are seen with it, hence it is withdrawn from the market. Okay. Here in the given options, rocuronium, pancuronium, atracurium and vecuronium. The only isoquinoline derivative is atracurium. If you just know the classification of muscle relaxant, that is steroidal compounds, isoquinoline derivatives, fumarates and miscellaneous, if you know that classification, you can answer here. Okay. Rocuronium, pancuronium and vecuronium all are steroid. Atracurium is isoquinoline derivative which has histamine release property, hence the answer atracurium. Now coming to atracurium. Atracurium is isoquinoline derivative which is intermediate acting. It has histamine release property and the metabolism of atracurium is specific, that is it is non-enzymatic dependent non-enzymatic degradation, or few amount is also with ester hydrolysis, and the metabolite produced is laudanocin, which is CNS stimulant causing seizures. Okay. Atracurium, as it is metabolized in non-enzymatic dependent degradation and ester hydrolysis, it does not have any hepatic or renal metabolism, hence it is drug of choice in hepatic failure and renal failure, that is relaxant of choice in hepatic and renal failure patients. The isomer of atracurium is cis-atracurium, which is costlier than atracurium, but it has less histamine release and less production of laudanocin. Okay. If okay, regarding atracurium you have cleared. Next question, muscle relaxant that can be used in a patient with high serum bilirubin of 6 and serum creatinine of 4.5 milligrams per deciliter. This is a clinical question, scenario based question, clinical scenario based question. They are not just directly asking the muscle relaxant of choice in hepatic and renal failure. They have given you scenario with high serum bilirubin and high serum creatinine, that is hepatic failure and renal failure, relaxant of choice in hepatic and renal failure. This is the application of knowledge which you have gained. Okay. Hepatic relaxant of choice in hepatic and renal failure, we have already discussed, it is atracurium. If they give the question as a patient with ejection fraction 30% posted for hernia repair, what is the muscle relaxant of choice? Then it will be vecuronium. Vecuronium is more cardiostable, it has vagolytic properties. Steroidal components have vagolytic properties and vecuronium is cardiostable, hence used in this condition. Okay. They will not directly ask the question which is the relaxant of choice in hepatic failure or relaxant of choice in cardiac failure. Those questions are gone nowadays. Nowadays it is all clinical based, clinical scenario based questions. Okay. Application of knowledge which you have gained is very important. Next question, following train of 4 response is seen in. They have given you the train of 4 response here, that is constant but diminished response. This is the stimulus, this is the response. Okay. Options given are phase 1 depolarizing blockade, phase 1 non-depolarizing blockade, phase 2 depolarizing blockade and phase 2 non-depolarizing blockade. First we will discuss the concept here and then come and answer this question. Okay. The neuromuscular blockade is measured with the stimulus, neuromuscular monitoring, that is we will give different strengths of stimulus to the patient and observe the response in the particular muscle. This neuromuscular monitoring is done at most commonly done for ulnar nerve and the response is seen in adductor pollicis muscle, and the most accurate one is facial nerve stimulus seen at orbicularis oculi muscle, and the other nerves are posterior tibial nerve, tibialis posterior muscle. But the most commonly used is the ulnar nerve seen at adductor pollicis muscle. This is at the periphery and can easily be assessed. Okay. Most common is the adductor pollicis muscle with ulnar nerve stimulation. There are different kinds of stimulus which we give and observe the response. There may be single strength stimulus, train of 4 stimulus, tetany stimulus, post tetanic potentiation, double burst stimulus. There are different types, but the most commonly used one is the train of 4 stimulus. In train of 4 stimulus, we will be giving equal strength of stimulus at equal intervals within 2 seconds. Within 2 seconds, we will be giving 4 stimulus, okay, at timed spaced interval. These 4 stimulus and observe the response of the muscle. For depolarizing muscle relaxant, that is succinylcholine, you will be seeing a diminished response. Okay. Diminished response is as the succinylcholine goes and acts completely at all the receptors present on the motor end plate at a time. Hence, there will be a diminished response seen. But coming to the non-depolarizing muscle relaxants, these are competitive inhibitors. Competitive inhibitors in the sense they go and competitively block the receptors present on the muscle end plate in a competitive fashion. If the amount of acetylcholine present is higher than the amount of relaxant, then acetylcholine will bind to the receptor. If the amount of relaxant is higher than acetylcholine, the relaxant will bind to the receptors. Okay. This is a competitive inhibitor. Non-depolarizing muscle relaxants are competitive inhibitors. First, they go and bind to certain receptors available, and as the concentration increases, concentration of relaxant increases, they bind the further more receptors. This producing a train of 4 fade response. Initially, the response will be higher, and as the time passes, the response will fade off. As it is a competitive receptors, initially it binds only few receptors, then as the concentration increases, it binds further receptors. Okay. Hence, the train of 4 response is a faded response. Okay. I will just again explain you how it is, how there is fading in non-depolarizing muscle relaxants. First, if you give, suppose this is a motor end plate and there are receptors here, and acetylcholine receptor, acetylcholine molecules present here. Initially, there are maximum number of acetylcholine receptors, and later there will be we will be giving new non-depolarizing muscle relaxant, which will be replacing these acetylcholine receptors and binding the receptors. Initially, as the acetylcholine receptor choline molecules are higher, you will be seeing the normal response. Now, as the relaxant concentration is increasing, as the relaxant concentration is increasing slowly, first 5, then 6, you will be seeing the faded response. Okay. You will be seeing the faded response as the relaxant concentration increases. This fade response is seen with non-depolarizing muscle relaxants. But coming to the succinylcholine, as it acts on all the receptors present at a time, hence it has diminished response. Okay. And in succinylcholine, if you repeat the dose or increase the dose of succinylcholine, it shows phase 2 blockade. This phase 2 blockade is similar to the non-depolarizing muscle relaxant blockade, that is there will be a fade response. Okay. In train of 4, you will be seeing the ratio of fourth response to the first response. If the train of 4 ratio is less than 0.4, then it indicates there is sufficient action of muscle relaxant. If it is for reversal, the train of 4 ratio will be more than 0.9. Okay. Here phase 1 depolarizing blockade, there will be no fade of response, and phase 2 there will be fade of response seen, similar to the non-depolarizing muscle blockade. Okay. This is succinylcholine, this is phase 1 and phase 2, and this is non-depolarizing muscle relaxations, there is fade phenomena. Okay. There is fade. And post-tetanic potentiation is seen with non-depolarizing muscle relaxation, there is potentiation here. In succinylcholine, there is no post-tetanic potentiation. Okay. Now, they have given you that constant but diminished response is seen with phase 1 depolarizing muscle blockade. In phase 2 depolarizing muscle blockade, there will be fade phenomena, and in non-depolarizing muscle relaxant blockade, there will be fade phenomena. There is no phase 2 non-depolarizing muscle relaxant phase. Okay. Next question, Constituents of the following, that is EMLA, they have given you EMLA. EMLA is eutectic mixture of local anesthetic, 2.5% lignocaine and 2.5% prilocaine. Here you have to read the options given clearly. Do not jump into procaine, prilocaine. Prilocaine is different. EMLA is lignocaine plus prilocaine, 2.5%. Okay. What are the uses of EMLA, and regarding EMLA we will discuss few points. EMLA is eutectic mixture of local anesthetics, that is 2.5% lignocaine plus 2.5% prilocaine. Okay. It is onset of action of this cream is 30 to 60 minutes. It is used to take IV cannula in children, IV cannulation in children, and also for certain skin procedures to anesthetize intact skin. It is not used for cut skin. Okay, this is the drawback of EMLA. In pediatric population, to take the cannula, you will just put the EMLA cream over the dorsum of the hand and cover it with a plaster, and after 30 minutes you will remove that, and that area is get anesthetized, and children will not feel the pain of the IV cannulation. Okay. Here the constituents of EMLA are lignocaine and prilocaine. Search for lignocaine and prilocaine. And lignocaine. Do not go with the options when certain questions are given. You have to remember and search for the known answer. Okay. Do not go with the options given like lignocaine, procaine, go and jump, put the answer as lignocaine, procaine. It is lignocaine and prilocaine. Okay. Next question, which of the following is not a contraindication for neuraxial blockade? Here they are not asking, they are asking not a contraindication, they are not asking you the contraindication. Which of the following is not a contraindication? Options given are platelet count less than 50,000, patient on clopidogrel, local infection, patient on antihypertensive medications. All these three are contraindications of neuraxial blockade. Patient on antihypertensive medication is not a contraindication. Okay. Contraindications of spinal anesthesia or neuraxial blockade is very important as for in your examinations. Okay. Contraindications of neuraxial blockade. There are absolute and relative contraindications, absolute contraindications and relative contraindications. What are the absolute contraindications? First and absolute most important contraindication of neuraxial blockade is patient refusal. If the patient refuses to have spinal anesthesia, you cannot force him to take spinal anesthesia. Okay. Patient refusal is an absolute contraindication, and the other contraindications are patient in severe shock, septicemia, local site infection, patient on anticoagulants, or patient with bleeding disorders, or platelet count less than 50,000. Okay. These are absolute contraindications of neuraxial blockade. Relative contraindications are patient with CNS disorders or any psychiatric disorders, or any spine abnormalities like kyphoscoliosis, patient with MI, heart blocks or mild aortic stenosis. Okay, these are relative contraindications. This slide is very important. Contraindications of neuraxial blockade, absolute and relative. Absolute contraindications are patient refusal, shock, septicemia, patient on anticoagulants, patient with bleeding disorders, platelet count less than 50,000. Okay. Next question. A resident at the emergency department is preparing for a lumbar puncture in a 26-year-old female with suspected subarachnoid bleeding. Although she presented with altered sensorium, CT brain was found to be normal. During lumbar puncture, which structure is pierced after the spinal needle crosses interspinous ligament? Options given are ligamentum flavum, arachnoid membrane, areolar tissue, subarachnoid space. Don't just fumble or fear that this is a big question, takes lot of time. Here the question lies only in the last two lines, that is, which structure is pierced after spinal needle crosses interspinous ligament? This is the question asked. This is just a scenario. Okay. The structures pierced during spinal anesthesia. What are the structures pierced during spinal anesthesia? Skin, subcutaneous tissue, supraspinous ligament, interspinous ligament, ligamentum flavum, also called as yellow ligament of body, ligamentum flavum, dura mater, arachnoid membrane. Okay. This sequence is very important, it was asked in your exams. Here after interspinous ligament it is ligamentum flavum. You can see here skin, subcutaneous tissue, supraspinous ligament, interspinous ligament, ligamentum flavum, and then comes dura mater and arachnoid membrane. Okay. Now after interspinous ligament it is ligamentum flavum. Answer is ligamentum flavum. Next question, which of the following combinations can be used for daycare surgery? Daycare surgery is the most recent advancement in anesthesia in last decade. Many questions are asked from this daycare surgery. The drug of choice, IV induction agent of choice, relaxant of choice, inhalational agent of choice, opioid of choice in daycare surgeries. Daycare surgery is very important for your examinations. They have given you the combination of drugs. Options are remifentanil, midazolam, propofol, fentanyl, midazolam, thiopentone sodium, morphine, midazolam, propofol, morphine, diazepam, ketamine. First we will discuss regarding daycare surgery. Daycare surgery came into light after knowing the importance of these short acting drugs, short and fast acting drugs. The drugs of choice in daycare surgery, the IV induction agent of choice for daycare surgery is propofol because of its fast induction and fast recovery and smoother recovery. Okay. And relaxant of choice in daycare surgery is atracurium, as it does not have any hepatic renal metabolism and the metabolism is very fast, it is used in daycare surgery. And the inhalational agent of choice is desflurane because of its fast induction and speed recovery, rapid induction and rapid recovery, hence it is used in daycare surgeries. But the induction agent of choice for children is inhalational induction agent of choice in children is sevoflurane. Desflurane is not used for induction because of its pungent smell. It is not safe for induction. Okay. We will induce with sevoflurane and you can use desflurane for maintenance. Okay. And the opioid of choice is remifentanil because of its fastest onset of action, very rapid onset of action. Okay. Write down the points. Daycare surgery, IV induction agent of choice. Muscle relaxant of choice. Inhalational agent of choice. Opioid of choice and inhalational induction agent of choice for children. Okay. IV induction agent of choice is propofol. Muscle relaxant of choice is atracurium. Inhalational agent of choice is desflurane. Opioid of choice is remifentanil. Inhalational induction of agent of choice for children is sevoflurane, and benzodiazepine of choice is midazolam. You can also use remimazolam. Okay. Here they have given remifentanil, midazolam, propofol. This is correct answer. Okay. Morphine is long acting, diazepam is long acting, thiopentone and ketamine are not used. Okay. Fentanyl is also intermediate acting, though it is fast acting, ultra short acting drug is remifentanil. Now coming to the color of 18 gauge intravenous cannula. This is very important question, image based question and clinical based question. The color of 18 gauge cannula is, it was recently asked in your INSET exams also. They have given you a cannula with pink color and they have asked the gauge of the cannula. Now here they are asking the 18 color of the 18 gauge cannula. Okay. First we will discuss the color coding. Yellow is for 24 gauge cannula, blue 22 gauge cannula, pink 20 gauge, green 18 gauge, white 17 gauge, grey it is 16 gauge, orange 14 gauge, and most commonly used cannula in polytrauma is 16 gauge, that is grey color cannula, and the most commonly used cannula in wards or wherever it is required, it is pink cannula, most commonly used. And for neonates it is 24 gauge cannula, and for premature neonates there is 26 gauge cannula which is purple in color. 26 gauge is purple or violet in color, okay, which is used for premature neonates. Okay. Now here they are asking 18 gauge cannula is green color, yellow 24 gauge, blue 22 gauge, pink 20 gauge, green 18 gauge. 16 gauge, 14 gauge it is grey, 14 gauge is orange, and the other one 17 gauge is white and 26 gauge is violet or purple. Okay. You have to remember this, the color coding of IV cannulas. Next question. You find a patient lying unconscious while jogging in the morning, what would you do? Here they are asking if a lay person or if it is a medical person, whoever it is who is jogging, if you find a patient unconscious, what are your first steps and what is the sequence of steps? They are asking you the sequence of basic life support. Now we will discuss the basic life support steps and then come here and answer. First of all, if you find a patient unconscious, you will verify the scene safety. That is that scene is safe for doing CPR for the patient side and also for yourself. If the patient is drowning in water, you cannot go into the water and do CPR. You have to get him out of the water and then start CPR. You have to verify the scene safety for both victim and also for yourself. And if the patient is in, like, if there is collapse of building, if the patient is under the building, you just can't go there and start CPR. You have to bring him out of that scene and take him to the safer place and start CPR. Okay. First step is verifying scene safety and then shout for help, call for help. if you have any mobile phone, you can use the app and call emergency response team, or you can call any emergency response team and inform that regarding the patient condition and where it's the exact place, and ask them to bring AED if available. Okay, you have to shout for help or call for help. If you are the only person, you can go and call. If you have a mobile phone, you can call from it, or you can go to the nearby. If you find another person, you can shout for help. Okay. After shouting for help, check for unresponsiveness. You should shout at the patient, are you okay? Shake the patient and shout, are you okay? If he is not responding, then check for pulse and breathing. You should not waste your time in checking for pulse and breathing. You have to check both pulse and breathing simultaneously and within 10 seconds. Within 10 seconds, you have to check both pulse and breathing. Okay. After confirming, if there are three scenarios here. If the patient is having breathing and pulse but he is unresponsive, then you should put him in recovery position, that is left lateral position, and wait until the emergency response team arrives. And the other condition is the patient is not having breathing but he is having pulse. Pulse is felt but he is not breathing and unresponsive. Then you can start giving rescue breathings. You can start giving rescue breathings at 5 to 6 seconds a breath. One breath in every 5 to 6 seconds, that is 10 to 12 breaths every minute. And after 2 minutes of giving rescue breaths, you can again check for pulse and breathing. If there is no pulse, then start CPR. If there is pulse but he is not yet still breathing, you can continue giving rescue breaths and check every 2 minutes, and you can wait until the emergency response team arrives. Okay. And if there is naloxone present, you can give naloxone intranasally if you suspect opioid poisoning. This is more common in US, but in India it is not frequently available. Okay. And the next situation where you do not find pulse or no breathing, then you straight away start CPR, chest compressions. If you are only person available, start chest compressions and give rescue breathings in the ratio of 30:2, that is 30 chest compressions followed by 2 breaths. These chest compressions should be fast and hard. You have to give chest compressions very fastly and hardly, and there should be recoil in between your compressions. This recoil will only allow for the heart to fill and give pumping to the next circulation. Okay. The rate of compressions are 100 to 120 per minute at the depth of 5 to 6 centimeters in adults. If it is adult patient, the depth is 5 to 6 centimeters, that is 2 to 2.4 inches. And you have to place both your heels on the lower 1/3 of sternum of the patient and put your arm straight and give fast and hard compressions. You should not waste your time. You should minimize the time of interruptions. Okay. 30 compressions followed by 2 breaths. After completing 5 cycles, that is 2 minutes of these 30:2 compressions and breath cycles, 5 cycles of 30:2 cycles, you have to again check for pulse and breathing. If you do not feel pulse, then continue the CPR. Immediately after the AED arrives, you have to the other person who bought the AED will put on the paddles on the patient, and during attachment of paddles to the patient, you should not stop the CPR. You should continue the CPR, continue the chest compressions. After the AED has attached to the patient, then you stop chest compressions and check the rhythm. Let the AED analyze the rhythm and prompt. Here you are doing basic life support, hence there is automated electronic defibrillator is used, which prompts out the rhythm. It tells the rhythm is shockable. Then you have to continue CPR and charge the AED. After AED is charged, you have to stop the CPR and clear the patient and give the shock. Deliver the shock of 200 joules or the maximum joules present, and then restart the CPR. You should not check the rhythm again immediately after giving defibrillation or shock, or check the pulse immediately. Immediately after shock, you have to start CPR. and after completing of 2 minutes of CPR, then reassess the rhythm with AED and check the pulse. Okay. You have to continue this sequence until the patient gains return of spontaneous circulation or patient moves or advanced life support team arrives, or if you are exhausted then you can't do anything, you can stop the CPR. Okay. These are the sequence of events which are done in basic life support. First is verify scene safety. Scene safety is very important, and then call for help, activate emergency response team, then look for breathing and pulse. If there is pulse present and breathing present, then wait until the emergency response team. Here no breathing but pulse present, give rescue breaths. Okay. Rescue breaths 10 to 12 per minute. Here you can use naloxone. Naloxone is the only drug approved in basic life support, and if no pulse, no breathing, then start CPR, that is chest compressions at the rate of 100 to 120 per minute, compression ventilation ratio 30:2, and the depth of 2 to 2.4 inches, that is 5 to 6 centimeters. Okay. And as soon as the AED arrives, you have to give shock if it is shockable rhythm, or continue CPR if it is non-shockable rhythm. Okay. Okay. The 2020 update here is you should not waste the time. Lay rescuer, if he is in doubt or if he is in doubt of pulse, whether pulse is present or absent, he can straight away start CPR. You should not waste time. Okay. Now, the options given here are check carotid pulse, CPR, call for help, shock if available. Call for help, check pulse, do CPR, observe or start CPR immediately. You should not, the options here are sequence: first scene safety, after scene safety call for help, yes, call for help, after call for help check for pulse and breathing and start CPR. This is the correct sequence. Okay. These are the important questions in NEET PG which are asked frequently. Thank you.